Welcome to the Adulting Podcast. I'm Zach Peter, a naturally platinum blonde podcaster, author, and sassy self-improvement addict spewing all those burning questions you're too afraid to ask.
And I'm Abigail Fraher, an unfiltered boss babe, daylighting as a lifestyle guru, stirring the pot on social issues. We're here to help you look cute,
live well,
work hard,
and stay woke.
Together, let's conquer adulting.
Welcome back to Adulting, everybody. I'm Zach Peter, and I'm so excited to adult with today's guest. He's a leader in functional medicine, the best-selling author of Ketotarian and the Inflammation Spectrum, the host of The Art of Being Well, and he's going to help us learn about intuitive fasting. I have a great intuition, and I'm always starving, so I think at this point I might be nailing it. Please welcome the author of Intuitive Fasting, the flexible 4-week intermittent fasting plan to recharge your metabolism and renew your health, Dr. Will Cole.
Thank you, my friend. It's always fun. It's always a fun time adulting with you. So thanks for having me back.
You know what? I try. I wake up every day and I'm like, I think you posted something on your Instagram recently too about adulting, about how do people do like a 10-hour workday and then come home and cook dinner and work out. I'm just like, I agree. All these little Instagram girls, I'm like, I don't know how you look so cute because like I'm having a day. But it's funny. Adulting is it's something we all do, whether we're in wellness or whether we're in business. Like we're all living our life. How are you? How have you been surviving this past year? I feel like the last time we talked was pre-pandemic. We were in studio. We were promoting the Inflammation Spectrum. How have you been in this past year?
Yeah, I mean, it's been 2020 last year was crazy. I mean, it's just, who would have expected that? We talked at the end of 2019. I feel like 2020 was just a strange parallel universe. And even now we're living in the midst of it. So, I mean, my life, other than traveling, which I did a lot for work and teaching in different areas, teaching at different events, et cetera, that's the only thing that really changed. I was always seeing patients virtually. You know this for the past decade. I started one of the first functional medicine telehealth centers, so I've always consulted people online. It's just the way that I did functional medicine, and I live outside of, I live in the country in Pennsylvania, so it's kind of a insular area. My life hasn't changed that much, and I'm quite aware that I'm the minority in that situation. And most people's lives change a lot, and I'm quite conscious of that. But it's just been, it's been a weird time for sure.
So like, what is like your mantra, or how do you get your headspace into, because we all have those days where we feel like we're in this alternate universe and it is really challenging. How are you staying focused? Because I always go to your Instagram post for like inspiration and you're always like, keeping us uplifted. But like, what is your internal kind of like chatter with yourself when you're having, one of those freak out moments? Because I feel like we came into 2021 really hard, and, a lot of people are still like, wiping off the dust from 2020. We rang in the new year and we're like, let's do it. And, some of us are going through a shaky time, but like, what are you doing to stay present and to stay focused on, the positive?
Well, for me, these are all principles of wellness that I've integrated in my life and I integrate in my patients' lives, whether it's a pandemic or not. And honestly, I think the more your foundation is firm, and if it's not firm, like what can you do today to start bringing acts of stillness and acts of wellness into your life now? Because if you're waiting for the right time, it's now. So don't feel shame if you don't have that sort of grounded wellness foundation. But for me, it's always been part of my life. So when things do get kind of crazy and there's things you can't control, you at least have a little bit more resilience and a little bit more of a centeredness because you have a firm foundation. So for me, it comes to mind that Eckhart Tolle talks about this. It's an ancient like Buddhist principle, but I tell my kids this for the past decade. I've told my kids this, is that you have to be in a state of acceptance, enjoyment, or enthusiasm. All those are the three modes of enlightened living. If you're picking one of those three in any given moment, you're going to have an inner peace and an inner stillness. If you're not in acceptance or enjoyment or enthusiasm, you are choosing chaos for yourself and for those around you. So for me, this 2020 was, for many people, and for me included, a time of acceptance, radical acceptance because you can't really change so much. So for me, it's easier said than done. It's definitely a practice to show up for yourself in a state of acceptance on a continual basis, but to always bring yourself back to that centered moment. So for me, I try to put that out on Instagram, on social media, to provide some sort of stillness and sanity in all the noise and tribalism and chaos.
I agree. And I feel like there are still some people that I just like want to bang their head up against the wall because I want like people to realize that wellness and health are such a full trifecta, sort of mental, physical, and emotional. And we keep focusing on the physical, and we have our foam rollers and we lift the weights, but like we're not practicing like lifting the weights on our hearts or on our emotional and spiritual health as well. And you're so good at kind of incorporating all of those pieces. Do you feel like they all are like equally important when it comes to wellness, or do we kind of shift in and out of them?
They're all equally important, but in different seasons of our life, we're going to find some areas need extra attention. But they're all part of it. I mean, it's so simple that sometimes people don't give the simple things the respect and the honor that they deserve. So people know like stress isn't good, or they know that, we were talking about mindfulness, that these things are good things, but it's too abstract. It's not respected enough. It's too ethereal. They don't actually know the showing up and really just doing the practice on a day-to-day basis. These are simple things that are not easy things, but they're simple things. And if you're consistent with it, like you said, you can start growing that mindfulness muscle. You strengthen yourself in that way, where when the storm comes, and when it comes, you will be able to mitigate risk factors as much as you can. You'll be able to go through that situation with a sense of grace. And I've seen that over the course of my years consulting patients too. I mean, we're talking about people with autoimmunity and people with other different issues that their life is anything but easy. I mean, very difficult cases. And it was interesting to see as the pandemic came, my patients largely were resolute. They were still through it. They were forged through their own health journey, that inner knowingness that they'll be okay and they'll get through it. Doesn't mean every day is great, but it means that they were unshaken with the pandemic, because they kind of live in a pandemic many ways of their life. The point is, not everybody has an autoimmune condition, but the beauty out of that comes a strength and a fortitude that I see. I would just echo that anybody could have that. They don't have to go through pain to learn that. They can go through proactive transformation to actually start building that mindfulness muscle through practice and through showing up for themselves.
I feel like I mean, I can only speak to America because this is where I live, but we live in this chronic state of unhealth. Like we focus on, I mean, even right now, a lot of people are kind of like staying home and ordering in and not really keeping up with any sort of regimen that focuses on working their body or even their mind. So like even for me, like I even joke sometimes. I was like, today I don't know. I woke up and I wasn't feeling so good, and I don't know if I'm hungover or if I have COVID, because we're in this and that's how I feel like many Americans are. Like we're in this constant state of just like brain fog just feels normal. Fatigue and tired and burnout just feels normal, that like you don't even know when you're sick anymore because we're in a constant state of sickness. What do you think is like a first kind of attainable step for us to be like, okay, I feel like shit. Let me shift this so that I don't have to feel like this anymore?
Well, I think it's a great point, is that just because something's common doesn't necessarily mean it's normal. Like,
Yes.
for people to really think about that just because it's your everyday doesn't mean you should settle for it.
Yes.
And many people settle for that bleak existence because it's their everyday and they can get through the day all right. It's not a good quality day, but they push through and they can make it happen. But look, the reality is, just because you may be better off than other people doesn't mean it's optimal for you. So I think you need to find out you're optimal. And the best way to do that is to check in with yourself. Like really use how you feel and use the present moment and body awareness as a meditative tool to check in with your life. Check inventory of the systems of your body, whether that's, how am I feeling mood wise? How's my digestion? How is my sleep? Do my muscles and my joints? You'll just root yourself in your body, because many people are just so in their heads, so busy, so distracted, so numbed, that they're actually not ever in touch with their body and where they're at. So I think that the first thing is just being real honest with yourself about how are you doing? Check in with your health, check in with your body, check in with all aspects of your wellness, because you have to know what you're dealing with to do something about it.
And I think an important lesson that I learned is when you check in with yourself, like not only is there's such important feedback in that sometimes you're like, I don't feel well today. I don't feel good today. And you need to kind of like honor that and then lean into it and be like, but why don't I feel good today? And see what you can do and what you can incorporate into your practice or your lifestyle to help actually, move through that and get on the other side of that. But you need to take inventory and you need to be okay with whatever the answer is.
Yeah, exactly. And the answer is not always going to be what you want to hear, but
Right.
that's that intuition that I kind of refer to with intuitive fasting. I want people to get to that place of a deep discernment on what their body loves, what their body hates, what's going to make them feel great, what's going to make them not feel great, and have the awareness to choose the things that will make them feel great. It's nice to say that, right? I mean, with our
Right.
culture, it's nice to say, "Oh, I'm a fan of intuitive eating," or that's that's the way that I live my life. But when you're struggling with anxiety, or you're struggling with hormone imbalance, or hangriness, or insatiable cravings, or inflammation, it's really hard to actually hear that still small voice of your intuition. So I want people to get there. They have to get there, but when you're in the midst of that storm, of that noise, of that imbalance going on in your body, it can be hard. But checking in
Yeah.
with yourself can be the beginning, genesis of
Hmm.
what do you need to do? What do you need to start acting on every day to start feeling better?
And we forget that like the food system in America is so jacked up that like there are excitotoxins and like sugar is so addictive that like sometimes it is so much. And our culture is so focused on like, oh, you're having a bad day. Have a pint of ice cream. Go to Ben and Jerry's and just get a big old pint of ice cream, and that's gonna make your life all better. It's gonna heal your broken heart. And it's like, no, it's gonna make me feel like shit, and then I'm gonna feel tired and hungover from sugar the
Yeah.
next morning, and it's gonna make my broken heart even worse. So how do we cultivate that intuition, or how do we tune into that intuition? Because I feel like we're so disconnected from our bodies.
Yeah. I think that, look, there's different levels of this. I think that on a physiological level, many people there's the proverbial noise going on there when you're talking about blood sugar volatility, a blood sugar roller coaster, insatiable cravings, chronic inflammation, hormone imbalance. All of this stuff is proverbial noise that can drown out that resolute voice of your intuition. So for us to have actual authentic intuition when it comes to health and wellness, we need to, well, first have a glimmer of awareness of that, which is the early stages of like hearing your intuition. You need to have awareness of that. So that begins before you really do, quote unquote, any action. But from that, that's a seed of growing that mindfulness muscle, growing that awareness, growing that intuition, or awareness of the intuition. So metabolic inflexibility is what all that stuff is. The blood sugar problems, hormone problems, digestive issues, inflammation, that is metabolic inflexibility. That is the death of intuition, as far as being able to really know and have proper signaling pathways in what's going to make you feel great, what's going to optimize your day, what's going to have a light in your life. Metabolic flexibility, on the opposite, is fertile ground for authentic intuition when it comes to food, intuitive eating authentically, or intuitive fasting, or intuitive anything, just having a knowing of what your body loves and hates. So the conversation that I'm having throughout intuitive fasting, the book, is just, let's get metabolic flexibility so you can actually check in with your body, have a rootedness in your body on a physiological level, but also a mental, emotional, spiritual level, to know what your body loves. So through flexible intermittent fasting, we all have heard about it before, but what are we actually building there? It is like a yoga class for your metabolism, where you, like, when I show up for yoga and I've never done yoga before, I suck at yoga.
Yeah.
And I think this is completely unnatural. How the hell do you hold these poses? How does the human body ever do something like this? If I quit the first time I did yoga, I would say yoga isn't for me. It's definitely, no, it's my racing mind. It's my inflexible body. It's all that stuff because I'm not good at it yet. So Flexible intermittent fasting is a sort of yoga for your metabolism to stretch and contract your metabolism through vacillating eating and fasting windows. But just like with yoga, you kind of anchor yourself in your breath and can use that as a meditation. That's what I want people to do during these fasting and eating windows, is to grow in more mindful fasting windows and mindful eating, to grow that mindfulness muscle, not just on a physiological level, i.e. lowering inflammation, balancing hormones, resetting the gut, but also growing the mental, emotional, spiritual mindfulness muscle while you're doing the physical stuff, to grow all aspects, like we just said, all these different components of wellness all are interconnected that make you feel great or make you feel really lousy if they're not working well.
So how do I just play devil's advocate? Because I feel like so many people even come at this, and I even have cycles of this where where my body is telling me I want sugar right now. And I'm listening to my body because that's what my body says. I'm feeling emotional. And so because I'm feeling emotional, I want to treat myself with some sugar. How is that different from mindful eating? Because I'm technically listening to what my body's asking for.
Yeah. So I think there's two different levels of that. One, where somebody's body is at that point where they're having that craving, they're having that urge, or they're having the hangriness, even though that's born out of imbalance and that is masking the actual true voice of your intuition, it's still fine to eat that and even use that food that will, like you said, you eat that sugar because it's going to help your heart break. It's going to make you feel like crap the next day. So, but you can even use that imbalance and redeem it as a meditative tool to say, did it serve me or did it sabotage me? You can still even use that thing. It's not intuition, but you can redeem it from your intuition. You can actually say, whoa, no, that wasn't worth it. And you can grow an intuition that way. It's not going to be it's going to be a little bit more painful, right? Because you don't feel as good doing it, but you can still use it as a mindfulness practice and take inventory of how that food made you feel. But I would say ultimately when those insatiable cravings are happening, those are more things masking itself as the intuition. So is it hangriness or is it intuition? Is it hormone balance or intuition? Stress eating, emotional eating, insatiable cravings are not intuitive eating. They are things that you can make intuition come from that, but it's not true, authentic intuitive eating because, like you said, it's going to perpetuate you feeling lousy. Is that your intuition wanting you to feel more lousy because those things disrupt the microbiome and raise inflammation and throw off your blood sugar? No, that's not it. That's your body wants homeostasis. Your body actually wants to feel great, not feel lousy,
Right.
not the quick fix that you think will help your problem, but really won't. So when you get metabolic flexibility, that will make sense. You'll have a discernment and awareness to know, okay, that food, I can choose to eat it or not to choose to eat it, but I know how it's going to make me feel. And you'll probably eat less of it because you're more metabolically flexible. And then you still be so resolute in your awareness that you will be able to eat it and then let it go. And you won't shame yourself or obsess about it. It's just you have agency over your body and your health.
So let's talk about fasting. Because I think, because you mentioned hangry, and I think when people think of fasting, they think they're gonna be hangry, or they think of like a juice cleanse where like you feel like and you feel like just your body just feels like it's hungry. So what's the difference between fasting and like starving or calorie restriction?
So fasting, true intermittent fasting, and a specific type of intermittent fasting that I talk about in the book is time restricted feeding, or TRF. So it's not about caloric restriction at all, chronically lowering your calories. It's specific windows of eating that are flexible. That is like that yoga class for your metabolism, is that you show up and you do deeper windows of fasting, then you lighten up and you go deeper. The vacillating, ebbing and flowing fasting and eating, you're not always doing deep fast, you're not always doing light fast, is that yoga class for your metabolic system. So the opposite of that is chronic caloric restriction, that over just indefinitely you have a caloric deficit. You're basically over time will get very fatigued. You're slowly lower your metabolism. You'll be really hangry and irritable because you are hypocaloric. You're too low calories, which in the short term, people may lose some weight with that, but it fails most people most of the time, chronic calorie restriction or dieting in that way. That time restricted feeding and the different types of intermittent fasting is not about that. It's times of fasting and times of eating. And there's just periods of when you eat and periods of when you fast. And by contracting and expanding them, where you really can leverage the benefits of the fast but still nourishing your body with ample amounts of nutrient dense foods and ample amount of calories when you are eating.
So what about I know like Dr. Mercola talks about like doing like a couple of days of just like liquid fasting, or I know for a minute there was the really popular like master cleanse. Like, are those types of fasting that you endorse or that we can incorporate into our lifestyles, or are you like, no, don't even touch that, fit it into your daily lifestyle with this intuitive fasting sort of approach?
There's a place for longer fasts, like you mentioned, the multiple water day fast. There's a place for that. There's a place for even green juice cleanses and things like that. Because what is it doing? It's getting you some nutrition, but giving your digestion a break. Or with water fast, it's a deeper fast that is going to get deeper benefits for people that need it. It's not for everybody. So the way that I designed the flexible plan in intuitive fasting are time restricted feeding windows that start off with lighter fasting. So for week one, it's a 12-12 fasting to eating window. That's the easiest week, but I wanted people to get adjusted to that. So let's just say 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. or 8 a.m. to 8 p.m., 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. You have 12 hours of the day to get your calories, but I'm pairing that with a ketotarian way of eating, which is my made up word for a mostly plant-based, clean ketogenic diet. Why? Because a clean ketogenic diet mimics fasting without actually fasting. So you're increasing ketosis, which both fasting and the ketogenic diet both increase ketosis. That's where a lot of the health benefits come from. It's tapping into what researchers refer to as the fourth macronutrient. So we have protein, fats, carbs, and ketones. So it's a way to burn fat, but it's also a signaling molecule, meaning it lowers inflammation, it increases autophagy, which is our cellular recycling, increases mitochondrial biogenesis, improves our brain function, it resets the gut. It's doing a lot of the health benefits that you read about fasting. A ketogenic diet and fasting will do that. So when you pair them together, it amplifies the benefits of both. So by 12-12, it's just eliminating late night snacking so your body can fast through the night until you break the fast at breakfast in the morning. So week one, that's the body reset, 12-12 fast. But week two, we dig a bit deeper to about an 18-hour fast, which I think you do quite a bit. I mean, 12 to 6 p.m., basically you're waiting till lunch to break your fast. You're eating within a 6-hour period. You're getting your calories in through those 6 hours. And then you're fasting after 6 p.m. until lunch the next day. That's week two. We're working on more cardiometabolic markers, lowering inflammation, improving insulin sensitivity, decreasing leptin resistance, which can drive weight loss resistance. And week three is the deepest fast. It's an almost OMAD fast. It stands for 1 meal a day. So it's a 22-2 fasting to eating window every other day. And then week four, we're opening back up. The point, I guess I'm going roundabout with saying, I think that those sort of, you're not doing the same thing all the time, is something you can integrate into your life ongoing, sustainably. The water fast, like you mentioned, the multiple day water fast is great therapeutically for certain people or people that should do that periodically. A lot of times it's longer fast. It's best with the healthcare professional or an expert in that space. You're doing it appropriately and it's the right thing for you. What I'm advocating for in intuitive fasting, that type of intermittent fasting that I just kind of started to talk about, those are things anybody can do in their life on their own. They don't need a doctor for that.
So the 4-week plan, is that something that we do for 4 weeks and then we just abandon fasting, or do we go back to the 12-hour, or like what does the lifestyle look like after we do the program?
So week three, I mentioned the almost OMAD. That's the deepest fast. We're working on that autophagy and stem cells and longevity, supporting those longevity pathways. Week four, we're opening back up to 12-12. So it's sort of that savasana at the end of yoga class where you're kind of relaxing. It's like, oh my gosh, I just did that harder class. Week four, we're increasing clean carbohydrates. We're getting that kindling on the fire of clean carbohydrates because we've become more fat adapted. We're becoming more metabolically flexible. So that's that grace and lightness that I want people to find. No, look, you and I both know that people are coming into this at different points of their health journey.
Right.
In 4 weeks, they're going to feel a lot better, a lot better. But I want people to integrate this into their life ongoing. So I would, as I say this in the book, is to cycle through those 4 week protocol as many times as they need to, and check in with their body along the way, and then a bigger check in at the end of the 4 weeks. And the quiz that I have in the book, the metabolic flexibility quiz, they can retake that as a way to check in with their body and say, where am I at? And then there's two things that happen there. One, you'll continue to feel better because you're growing in metabolic flexibility, you're growing in intuition, you know where your body's feeling better, you know where you really thrive at. But you will see after maybe 1 or 2 or 3 cycles of those 4 weeks, oh, I did better with this type of fast, or I felt better with this one. We're all different. So you're going to be able to see some people will feel really good as a maintenance plan with that 12-12. Some people still have work to do where they maybe do a couple more weeks of the 18-hour fast, or maybe some people will periodically do more of the almost OMAD 1 meal a day approach. So I want people to grow an intuition that way too, to kind of focus on the things where their body needs that. And as they feel better and their health is restored and their head is above water, so to speak, they'll have better awareness on what their body needs more of and what their body needs less of.
And so the intention of doing any sort of fasting isn't necessarily for weight loss, because I think that's what most people are like, I'm going to fast, which means I'm going to restrict calories, which we now know is not necessarily the case. And therefore, I'm going to lose weight. That's not the intention of a program like this or intuitive fasting just in general, right?
No, that's such an important point. To be weird and quote Paracelsus, which who the heck does that? But Paracelsus is one of the fathers of modern medicine. He's known as the father of toxicology. He was called the Martin Luther of medicine because he was reforming medicine in the late 1400s, early 1500s in Switzerland. He called fasting the physician within. So I think that summarizes everything, is that if you have to lose weight, you'll become more fat adapted and you'll burn fat. You'll move past that plateau. But there are many people that don't have to lose weight, but they're doing fasting for other reasons because they're improving their brain function, balancing the hormones, lowering inflammation, supporting their gut health, whatever. They're tapping into that physician within for their specific reasons. So there's a few mechanisms at play here. Well, one, we're not lowering our calories chronically. So you're eating amply when you're eating. So there's not a caloric deficit for long, and you're getting your calories in within the day. And two, beta hydroxybutyrate, the ketone, is actually muscle sparing. So if you don't have to lose weight, you actually can put on some muscle. So I see people that are underweight that maybe have problems digesting, absorbing foods, so they're actually underweight. Well, they're repairing their gut over those periods of time. So their body's actually absorbing nutrients more, and beta hydroxybutyrate the ketone is actually preserving muscle mass and building and supporting basically building muscle. So improved digestion and absorption and building muscle. People that are underweight can actually put on a few healthy pounds of muscle after doing something like this. So that's a physician within. It's a recalibrator. It's a resetter. It's a rebalancer. It's healing things that need to be healed.
And so when it comes to fasting, I know a lot of people do like the bulletproof, the butter in the coffee, or they do some creamer in their coffee. Are those technically fasting safe to be, because I know people add calories, but they'll do it in like a liquid form, or they'll have a protein shake in the morning instead of an actual meal. Is that still considered fasting, or are they just like not doing it right?
It's not all or nothing. I see it on a gradient. And if something like a bulletproof coffee, or getting coffee and putting MCT oil, which is that fat, or ghee or butter in coffee, what is that? It is mimicking fasting in many ways, because it's having a negligible effect on insulin. And if you're having one of those in the morning, it's calorically not that much. If you were having 5 or 6 of them, calorically, that probably isn't the best idea if you want to get the benefits of fasting. I see those foods as a great tool when maybe somebody is just starting out, as a gateway into metabolic flexibility, because it's way better than the standard American breakfast. And you're getting those healthy fats in, which is stabilizing your blood sugar. It's not throwing you out of ketosis or the benefits of fasting, and it's satiating. So it's kind of like curbing appetite. So that's a good starting tool. And it's good for anybody, even if you're more advanced fasting, something like that can be a good tool if it makes your fast easier. Because if you get more benefits than negatives from it, then do it. I would say this, that if you want to err on the side of once you are comfortable, I don't think you always have to lean on those things. That doesn't mean you can bring it in when you want to. Again, there should be a grace about this and not feel like you can't do it. But I would say as you get more fat adapted, you probably are going to find you don't need that every morning. You may have the coffee, but just have it black. You may have the tea without anything in it. So I would eventually, at least periodically, do fasts where there's actually no calories in the time restricted feeding in the intermittent fasting window. So at that point, why is that? It's that your digestion is getting an entire break from it. There's no digesting. Your gut can fully focus on repairing and healing. Your microbiome can fully focus on resetting that circadian rhythm of your microbiome throughout the day. And if you're looking at proteins and if you add like collagen powder, for example, or you mentioned like a protein powder, there's a pathway called mTOR. It stands for mammalian or mechanistic target of rapamycin, which is a lot of what researchers are looking at as for the longevity, the anti-disease, the longevity benefits of fasting. That pathway is more sensitive to protein intake. So adding in collagen protein or protein powder could, in theory, downregulate mTOR upregulate mTOR and downregulate some of the longevity autophagy benefits. So if you want to err on the side of, I want to support longevity, I want to support autophagy, I would go for no calories in during your fast. So think coffee or tea, black, nothing added.
Okay. And so when we are not fasting and we're eating, I'm assuming we're not just doing Burger King because this is my one time where I have to eat. So let me just go get some fast food and fries.
Yeah, no, I would not advocate fasting your way out of a poor diet. Otherwise, that starts to look a little bit like a disordered eating disguised as a wellness practice. That's not good. Like restriction and binging, not good.
We don't have those issues here in Los Angeles, Dr. Cole.
Doesn't exist. So, but the reality is there's no shame in learning about where you're at with your relationship with food or learning about your relationship with your body. But I want people to really have a healthy relationship with both of those things, their body and food. And that's one of the critiques or the judgments that different types of intermittent fasting, or those of us that talk about that, is say, well, you're advocating for disordered eating. That's the antithesis of what we're advocating for. We're talking about flexible intermittent fasting here, nothing too arduous, nothing too punitive, and you're eating amply healthy foods when you are eating. So while there are studies that have been shown in the journals to show you don't have to change your diet much and you will see benefits from some intermittent fasting, that was done for medical journals. That was done to see, does fasting hold its own without changing calories much or changing food much? Well, we had to do that for studies. But from a real life, long-term, does this improve my life sustainably standpoint, I would absolutely recommend pairing a clean diet with intermittent fasting, because they both complement each other. Because the more stable your blood sugar is, the more satiated you are because of nutrient density when you are eating, the more it's going to make your fast easier, because your blood sugar is going to be so more stable and you're going to be so much more satiated.
What about fasted workouts? Because we had Jillian Michaels on the show a couple months ago, and she yelled at me because I told her that I wasn't eating before doing my workouts. And she said, you shouldn't do that. First, she asked me if I felt fine or if I felt tired getting through the work. And I was like, well, I kind of feel okay. I think my body's just used to it. But should we be doing fasted workouts? Because from my understanding, I was doing fasted workouts because I was under the impression that I guess you burn more fat that way because you're technically, I don't know, you know this, you're the doctor. But I was under the impression that you do fasted workouts because it burns more fat.
Well, in theory, fasting is a hormetic effect, and so is exercise. So that's that good stress, hormesis, that cortisol is going to be slightly higher during the fast, just like workouts slightly increase cortisol too. So increasing two different hormetic effects, fasting and workout, when human growth hormone is higher during the fast, you're increasing lipolysis and fat burning with both. They work synergistically. So in theory, you could amplify the benefits of both with doing a fasted workout. But that's not to say that everybody do a fasted workout. And that's not to say that you should always do it, even if it does work for you. So as I advocate in the book, is you should experiment with both. The more metabolically inflexible somebody is, the more I would say don't do the fasted workouts, because it's just going to be too much stress on the body as your body is getting more metabolically flexible. So let your body just adjust to this. But the more metabolically flexible you are, you can do periodic fasted workouts, and many people love it and feel benefits from it. So it's not all or nothing. And that's the thing with, you know, I send love to everybody. There's no shame, no hate on anybody. But the reality is context matters. And it's
Right.
very easy for us to make broad sweeping, overgeneralized statements and say, well, this is always bad for everybody, or this is always great for everybody. Well, it's how are we doing it? And then who's the person that's doing it at this point in their life? And the truth is oftentimes somewhere in the middle. It's less sexy from a soundbite standpoint, but it's the truth.
I like those sound bites. They get me in trouble though. Um, so what when we are doing intermittent fasting, is it good to do it like the same 12, like 6 to 6 or 8 to 8, or is it okay to kind of shift? Because I'm just thinking of like my schedule, and like tomorrow I have a 6:30 a.m. workout. So, but I don't always work out at 6:30 a.m. So if I'm going to do intermittent fasting, I would probably, cut dinner off at 6 tonight so that I have that 12-hour window so that I can maybe have a protein shake before I work out. So Jillian Michaels will stop yelling at me. But like, what is that? Is the hours, is it okay to kind of change per day the hours, or should we stick to the same schedule throughout the week?
I adjust it accordingly. Adjust it with your schedule. This should work for you. This should better your life. So don't feel held down by some rules or protocol. Part of the adjustment, that flexibility that I put throughout intuitive fasting is I want you to adjust this according to your schedule. I want you to adjust this according to your personal preference of what do you enjoy it? Because I'll tell you what, if you do have the same protocol, a fasting protocol or way of eating or way of exercise, and you have two people that have similar labs and similar health histories, et cetera, one person hates what they're doing and it's such a source of dread and obsession, and the other person loves it, you're going to get two different outcomes based on the stress and the arduousness and the punitive, like negative relationship that person has with it. That raises cortisol, raises inflammation levels, impacts their gut brain axis, impacts their hormones, all that stuff. It's not, that biochemistry lab of their physiology is going to be completely different. So I want people to love what they're doing, and doesn't mean that they always are going to be great at it because they're starting something new. Just like with that yoga class, they're not going to be great at it at first, but they at least have a positive attitude and a curiosity to leaning into new things. And that will, when you're consistent enough with it, will produce a great result. So if you want to adjust the fasting window to work with your schedule, I would rather it be sustainable for you than you feel like this is like a pain in the butt. You have to readjust your entire life to fit this very strict regimen.
And now when it comes to calories, do we even look at them when we're fasting, or we just kind of trust that we will stop eating when we get full?
I put some parameters in the book to amplify the benefits of the fast. So by pairing the vacillating, these ebbing and flowing fasting windows over those 4 weeks, I paired it with that ketotarian diet because it mimics fasting. So it's fasting mimicking with a mostly plant-based, clean ketogenic. We're talking about pescatarian, like Mediterranean keto, vegetarian keto, and vegan keto options, and some flexible options that have omnivore options too. So there's a lot of variety there. But by playing around with macro variability and eating window variability, that goes back to that yoga class analogy again, because you're not always doing the same thing. And a cyclical approach based cyclical fasting and cyclical ketotarian is a great way to keep your metabolism flexible. So I want people to keep it simple. If they just want to keep it simple and focus on generally eat more of this, eat less of this, do the fasting windows, by all means, that's going to work for the majority of people that read the book. But if some people want to get a little bit more specific, I put the grams and the macros in there if they want to play around with that. I like keeping things simple. So I more or less would just say, focus on these foods, have less of these, eat within the window, because you'll start getting a rhythm as you learn about your body and feeling great on what works for you. And I lead you along the way in the book, just like I do with patients. So it doesn't have to be super like biohacker. If you're a biohacker and that lights you up and you love it because you want to track the chronometer or the MyFitnessPal and get the lumen and get the aura ring and get all the stats, then go for it. And I put all the data in there to do that, but not that overwhelms some people. And I want this to be as accessible to most people. And you don't have to be a health science major or a mathematician to get healthy.
I shouldn't say hate, but I find biohackers as annoying as the pretty blonde Instagram girls. Like they just are so intense with their lifestyle. I'm like, I don't need your ring and your. I'm like, chill. Like
I
breathe.
know. You know what? I feel the same way. I like keeping healthy simple. If it betters your quality of life, if it's your own N-of-1 experiment, then go for it. But not everybody needs to do that.
Is there any workout plan incorporated with fasting, or we just kind of get all the benefits from the actual food program?
I want people to move their bodies and experiment with fasted and non-fasted workout and see where they felt the best. But it's not the primary objective of the protocol. I want people to really look about food variability and fasting variability to get metabolic flexibility with some workouts peppered in, which is important. But when you're changing and overhauling somebody's life, you want to mitigate variables as much as possible. If they are used to a certain level of workouts, then keep doing it. It's okay. I don't want people, if they do no workouts and then start changing up the foods they eat and fasting all at once, that's a lot of change over a 4-week period. So I would just lean in gently as far as the physical activity, focus on one thing at a time or a few things at a time. You'll still see amazing benefits. And once you get that down, you can lean in your workouts a bit more. But I find that some people with the best of intentions go too much too soon on everything. And it's with good intentions, but that can make them feel like a failure because it's all that change at once. And you have to meet your body where it's at. And even if it's gentle and you're leaning in, that is better than rushing through something and it's not sustainable. I'd rather have someone lean into something and be sustainable.
I agree. And I'm going to do the program. I think I'm just going to start this week. I'm not even going to wait until Monday. I'm just going to start this week. These recipes look so yummy. Roasted carrots with jalapeno pecan salsa. This looks so good, Dr. Cole. Everyone needs to get the book because it is filled with so many yummy recipes. Ooh, a coconut lime smoothie. I want it right now. I'm going to make it right now.
Yeah, and those are all ketotarian too. The macros on those are really good. So that's the other thing too, Zach, is like we took the guesswork out of it for the recipes. They're really easy. And the macros, you just eat from there. You don't have to worry about the macros and proteins, fats, and carbs because that's all measured out for you anyways.
And there you go. And you have a new podcast, right?
Yeah, thank you.
The Art of Being Well.
It's called The Art of Being Well. Yeah. So as you know, I hosted Keto for 3 years, and then I hosted Goopfellas for a year. That's on pause right now. So it's just, to me, it was like, I wanted to continue the conversation that I've been having on these shows, but I never did a solo podcast before. So this is my first ever one. We just have different topics about wellness and wellness adjacent things that impact your wellness. So I've enjoyed it a lot.
About the art of being well.
It's this, there's a science and the art of what I do in functional medicine. So I wanted to, sometimes we go back to that earlier statement that I made about like, all right, well, context matters and how are you doing it and what person you're talking about. It's so easy for us to say, well, like this is bad, like fasting's bad for women. Well, how are you doing it and who's doing it? Who is she? All are different. Right. So instead of saying like this is bad for everybody, that's like going to the gym. You've never worked out before and you feel horrible because you did a really hard workout and you said the gym's not for me. Well, how did you do it? Where did you do too much? Like we give the gym the benefit of the context matters. Let's give something like fasting or ways of eating the same benefit of the doubt, that the art of wellness is just as important as the science.
Absolutely. And the podcast is out now, right? I saw you just had Dave Asprey on the show. Great guest.
Yes. I remember back in the day, you were early bulletproof aficionado.
I was.
One of the early adopters of it. Yeah, he's a cool guy.
I love it. So the book is on sale now. Intuitive Fasting, the flexible 4-week intermittent fasting plan to recharge your metabolism and renew your health. It is on sale now. The Art of Being Well is available now where all podcasts are available. Is there anything, I feel like you always have so much going on. Is there anything else you want to plug before we close out?
Well, I mean, will you come on The Art of Being Well?
I would love to.
Okay, cool. Cool. I just focused on my patients first and foremost. And from there, I think, having the podcast, having these conversations where I get to talk about case studies and what I've seen and have conversations about people like yourself about this stuff of things that you see and I see in our life about wellness. That's what I'm focusing on. And intuitive fasting. I think it's interesting to be releasing a book out during this time. Like normally, like you said, I was in LA with my son and like with my 14-year-old son, and we'd go on these book things together. It's definitely a different time, which makes it in a way more convenient for me because I could just be at home and talk to people all around the world without leaving, like I talk with patients. But it's definitely different. So I'm excited to virtually talk about intuitive fasting for the next year or two.
All right. Well, I'm excited. I will be listening and devouring all of it like I'm going to devour some of these recipes in this book. Where can people give you a follow on all the social medias?
So it's at Dr. Will Cole. That's DrWillCole. drwillcole.com. If people want to learn about functional medicine, telehealth, they can order the books there too. So yeah, thanks, Zach.
And you've got great quizzes on the website too, right? I'm always on there taking all your quizzes.
I love quizzes. And so all the quizzes are adapted from questions that I ask patients. So the newest quiz is called the Metabolic Flexibility Quiz, which is the quiz in intuitive fasting that I just put for free on the website for people to see how metabolically flexible they are. And then I made videos for everybody based on their score. And they can, again, retest that after they do the plan in the book. But we have fatigue quiz, gut quizzes, inflammation quizzes, thyroid quiz for people to get some subjective data on, pointers. These are pointers. They're not labs. They're pointers to see, is this something I should look into? Is this something I should address?
I love it. Thank you so much, Dr. Cole. Always appreciate chatting with you. You guys, you can follow me at Just Plain Zach. You can follow Abigail at Abigail_AF. And don't forget to follow at The Adulting Podcast on Instagram. Go to theadultingpodcast.com to find out where you can watch and listen to the show. If you have a Roku device and you're not following us yet, you can watch full episodes on Roku, full episodes on YouTube, listen to us on iTunes, Spotify, all the places. I don't think Luminary is a thing anymore, and I capped on it enough that I think I killed it. So you're welcome, Luminary. You're like Quibi. Thank you, guys. I will talk to you again next week with Abigail. She'll be back next week, and we have lots of great content coming out this season, so get ready. All right, until next time, I'm going to be doing some intuitive fasting, and I'm going to be #adulting.